Ladies and gentlemen, I have become a fan of an astrologer who has been able to do what most of us in India have not been able to do. Integrate astrology into daily life. Make your daily life more positive. Make your complete life more meaningful through the energies, working on the energies. Ideally, we should be talking about that in today's session. But he's going to touch upon a topic today which everyone is most excited about to know. And this is a concept of Western astrology of the great Jim Lewis, bringing it into Vedic astrology. I have known this technique since 2003 when I was interacting with Nora and Juliana, who were masters of Astro Cartography. Today he's going to teach us which country, which city in the world is one of the most ideal places for each individual horoscope. But before he does that, before he embarks on that, let me introduce to you all dear Kṣaṇāti. How are you doing, Kṣaṇāti?
I'm doing wonderful today. Thank you so much for having me, Sunil. It's such a blessing for me.
It's our honor and pleasure to have you. We want you to share your knowledge with our audience. Share something new. But before you do that, when and how did you start astrology?
Well, I started astrology, you could say, as a baby because both my mother and my grandmother and my uncle were all big proponents of Western astrology. And my grandmother in particular had all of our charts read by a Western astrologer at the time of birth, and she herself had an astrology program. But my uncle, whose name is Durga Das, he is a touring kirtanwala in the United States. And when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, he started introducing me into his circle of devotees of Neem Karoli Baba. And so through meeting certain people who were very much interested in astrology, I was also deeply introduced to the Vedic culture. And even though my uncle doesn't align with one religion, he seems to be the most devoted and the most observant of Hindu. And there was at some point that I toured with my uncle and his music, and I learned the Sanskrit language, and I learned to chant, and I learned to find my voice, so to speak, and share it with the divine. And it was at this same point that I kind of was introduced to Jyotish. And I had studied Western astrology and Vedic astrology from about the age of 12 or 13 until I was about in my early 20s. And then I very much was also interested in natural medicine, and I become to study Ayurveda. And I moved out to the Ayurvedic Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to study with Dr. Vasant Lad.
He's the best. He's the best. Yeah. You've been lucky. Yeah, you've been lucky. You deserve it, probably, definitely.
He's amazing. And so I studied with him for a few years out there in Albuquerque. And even though he is primarily focused on Ayurvedic medicine, he absolutely loves Jyotish. He's also a very knowledgeable about medical Jyotish. And every time when we look at a client in the classroom together, he puts up the chart of the client and he discusses certain medical aspects. but it was actually required in the first year, in the second semester at the Ayurvedic Institute, that we studied Jyotish. And of course, I had come to learn about Jyotish before that, but so it was an optional course, but it wasn't an option for me. And so I immediately signed up for the course. And about 2-3 weeks into it, my professor at the time, whose name is Simon Chikoisky, Siddhadeva, he began to say, "Oh my God, Kṣaṇāti, you have such a gift for this. You remind me of myself when I was at the Ayurvedic Institute, and everyone in the class was giving me their charts, asking me to look at their charts, asking me, and I was only been studying the Jyotish for a couple months, and I was already looking at 2, 3, 4 charts a week from all of my classmates, and I began to realize that it was a real calling for me, and that I had kind of found my gifts. So I continued to take these courses with Simon for the rest of my time at the Ayurvedic Institute. Now, at one point, I found there was a Jyotisha in New Mexico named Mahadev, and Mahadev is with the Amritam Amma organization out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And when I was 14 years old, I got my mantra by Amma, and I chose her as my guru, and she chose me. And so I had always had a close connection to Amma. And so when I found a Jyotisha who also has the same devotion to Amma, I immediately felt a connection. And when I met this person, I immediately knew he was my teacher. And so it was, so then I started studying with him full time, an apprenticeship, a mentorship. And he's been doing Vedic astrology for 40 years now. And so he is just a wealth of knowledge and information and experience, and he's not embarrassed to share it with me. And it's just been such a blessing.
He is amazing. I know him since 6 or 8 years. I mean, in the sense, we just interacted over emails. And incidentally, he has been one of my biggest bookshop clients. So considering the super advanced books he used to order, I knew he was way above. I mean, you're really lucky to have such great mentors and teachers. Yeah. Fantastic. So how do you, I mean, is astrology your full-time profession? What does it do?
It is. That's a really interesting question, because as I mentioned, I was studying Ayurveda, and it was towards the end of my studies of Ayurveda where I was becoming so fascinated with my study of Jyotish, so busy with readings, both general chart readings and astro cartography, as well as my apprenticeship with Mahadev, where it became clear to me that all of the Vedic sciences are so vast, are so powerful, that you really can't focus on many and get to the same deep place. So it was a very difficult decision, but I left my study of Ayurveda to devote myself to Jyotish full time and completely. This was about a year and a half ago. And I told Dr. Kṣaṇāti, and he says, "You are amazing with Jyotish. You will be so successful. I love your writings, and I support you, and I wish you the greatest of success." And even though it was a very difficult decision, because I very much honor Ayurveda, that I realized that my truest calling was with the Vedic astrology. And so that is my full-time profession. And I've been running my own private astrology organization now for about 2 years.
Oh, great. I wish you all the success for your this thing. And it must be very difficult to leave Ayurveda, because one truly falls in love with Ayurveda.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so medical Jyotish will certainly be also a big part of what I'd like to do, to integrate all the teachings of Ayurveda into the astrology in medical Jyotish.
Oh, medical Jyotish is an area that needs a lot of attention today, considering what's happening in the world. I mean, it truly needs a lot of attention. That's great. You're the man for the future. I mean, That's, and I'm quite sure with astrocartography, slowly, the reason I want you in our show, the reason I wanted to do series of videos in our show is I want the Indians to open up with astrocartography. It is a science that has been recently developed. I think it was please correct me here. I'm talking about a 10-year back memory. In 1973, I think so, Jim Lewis did it.
I think so, yes.
No. So, I mean, it's a fascinating science. As of now, I think the only Vedic astrology software that integrates it is Jyotish. Solar Fire, but that's a Western astrology software. Which software do you use for astrocartography?
Sometimes I use the Solar Fire. Other times there is a Jyotish, which sometimes works. But today I have a free program that is used through an astrological website because I know that many people are going to want to right away look at their astrocartography. So I have this set up this free program here that was introduced to me early on in my astrocartography learning that I think is a really great program to help access astrocartography without any price or anything like that. So it's through the website astro.com is the cartography program I have.
Oh, yes. Astro.com. Okay.
We will give the link.
We'll give the link. Astro.com. It's not a downloadable program, right? It's just you do it and.
Yeah. So you go to astro.com, then you go to a special subcategory called Astro Travel. And from that point, you just put in your birth details and you should get a world chart.
Okay. Somewhere in this presentation today, if you could do a live demonstration of how to create a chart on astro.com, your AC chart. Somewhere in the program today, wherever you feel ideal, you can do the screen share and show us so that the young ones can do it.
Okay, definitely.
Of course, I do not want the young ones to interpret their horoscopes themselves on their own and come to conclusions. They should ideally consult you or others who are into astrocartography, But at least the start of the mind, the curious mind should start off. Okay, the show is all yours. Inge and Kṣaṇāti, I'm just going to watch and learn.
Okay, wonderful.
So we're going to learn, guys, we're going to learn astrocartography. Do you want me to share your slides?
Yes, please start with the first slide.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I titled this session today, Astrocartography, the Geography of Destiny, because sometimes in Jyotish or Vedic astrology, we think of destiny or fate, these karmas, these lessons, these aspects of the universe that are meant for us to fulfill. And so when you're looking at the astrocartography, it can help you find and align with your destiny, so to speak, as it relates to the 4 traditional Vedic aims of life. And that's the kind of paradigm I'm going to be sharing it with all of you today. So how to use the astrocartography to align to the traditional 4 Vedic aims of life so we can achieve the 4 aims of life that God has intended for us. Of course, there's Dharma, which is our life purpose or our destiny, that which is to be filled. The cartography can go and show us how to align geographically with certain areas that may have more Dharma and certain areas that may be more adharmic or farther away, making the Dharma more challenging. Also, the aim of life, which is Artha. This is our ability to be prosperous and successful. It also includes financial security, our ability to provide for ourselves. The cartography can again help us align to help us achieve Artha in certain locations based on our chart, and the cartography can make Artha more difficult to achieve, can make money fall out of our pockets, so to speak. Also, the cartography helps support Kama, the fulfillment of all of our deepest soul's passions and desires, what we would like to accomplish in this lifetime on the deepest of levels. This is also very important in certain aspects of the chart, as well as cartography can show us that as well. And of course, the fourth or the final aim of life, which is moksha, liberation, enlightenment, communion with the divine. That certain energies of astrocartography help us align to our moksha. And it's kind of interesting along those lines that maybe we'll discuss that at another session. But a lot of people towards the end of their life, they move somewhere else to retire. And in the West, we might call this retiring. But again, it's where these people are moving for their transformation to the next realm, for their transformation to God. It's where they're going to die, so to speak. So there are certain energies that also help us get closer to God or our moksha vibration with the cartography. So again, the astrocartography, the geography of destiny, how to achieve the 4 traditional Vedic aims of life with the help of astrocartography.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I go to the next one?
Please.
Okay.
I'm going to cover 4 different areas today, just to kind of, in the future sessions, we can dive right into the aims of life and areas of life and how to use cartography to support that. But since this is our first session, it's important that we have a basic understanding of what is astrocartography. So that'll be the first thing that we'll discuss. Then I'll go into a little bit because, as it was mentioned, astrocartography is originally a Western science. How to integrate the science of astrocartography into Jyotish, Vedic astrology. How to take the principles of Vedic astrology and integrate them into the science of astrocartography. Then I'll go over some basic planetary significations for astrocartography. So what exactly some of the energies that these different planetary lines represent. Of course, it's always helpful to have a Vedic astrologer help interpret your lines to fully understand all of the areas and aims of life they're impacting. But the basic planetary significations can be helpful for understanding the basic power and the basic energy behind certain planetary lines. Mm-hmm. And then the final area, which is the specific area we'll be focusing on today, is how to encourage career prosperity and the aim of life, Artha, using astrocartography. So how can we achieve success, reputation, financial security, prosperity in this lifetime, especially as it relates to our career using the science of astrocartography?
I think that's so important, Kṣaṇāti and Inge, because most of us do have very stressed careers. And that stress carries on into our other areas of life. Our spiritual life, our family life, our love life, our sex life, our, all the other areas that stress is carried. Because the maximum time we are spending is on our careers. So I'm quite sure this is one of the most starting points. That's great. Brilliant.
The other areas also, because if we have success somewhere into our lives, we're going to be much more relaxed in the other areas of life.
Exactly.
Not confused. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit about something Dr. Vasant Lad taught me, that when we truly are in alignment with our dharma, our life purpose, or our destiny, that is what allows the space for Artha, prosperity and success, and allows the space to fulfill Kama. And eventually, when we're aligned with our dharma, Artha, and Kama, this gives good energy to our ability to achieve moksha. So these things are inseparable in some way.
Very true. Actually, he has put it so beautifully and perfectly, the order. Fantastic. Thank you.
It becomes one beautiful road, yeah? You just have to move it.
Yeah.
So what exactly is astrocartography? And I want to explain this in as simple as a way as possible. astrocartography, and you see a couple maps here. One is of North America, the other is of Asia and India. We'll be looking at that in a bigger scope in the next slide. But astrocartography shows a map of certain planetary lines and vortexes set at the moment of birth. So at the time that you're born, there are certain planetary lines that go across the globe. And where these planetary lines and vortexes fall, those planetary energies are going to be stronger for you. There are certain vortexes where the energy is the strongest along those planetary lines, and that'll be illustrated with the circle. You can see near the Philippines in the Asia map, there's a vortex as that black circle there. So this is just an example, but there are certain planetary lines that are set at the time of birth. And this vortex? Yes, that is a vortex. That shows where the planetary line is the most concentrated. And so this map will show where are certain planetary karmas, and there are deep metaphysical energies that are associated with it as well. But the basic idea is our karmas as relate to the planets, they kind of show up in the geography of the globe as well. And so astrocartography is the science which allows for the interpretation and understanding of these different planetary lines and vortexes. When the astrocartography lines are analyzed and integrated along with the natal chart.
Okay. Could I ask a question or two?
Please.
Okay. Now these lines that I'm showing now, these three lines that are passing through India.
Yes.
So these are the planet lines, correct?
Correct. And if you actually go to 2 slides over, I have a bigger map of that,
okay,
which might be easy.
Okay, fine. So, okay, when we come to that slide, I'll ask more deeper questions.
Okay.
Do you want me to go to the next slide?
No, it's, please proceed.
Okay.
So yes, these are the planetary lines here. Here you have the moon line, which is in West India. And there you have the Venus line, which is going through central India. This program also includes the outer planets, but in my tradition of Vedic astrology, we don't use those in the analysis as much. I focus more on the traditional Navagrahas, the 9 planetary forces as in traditional Jyotish. But for sometimes these outer planets, for certain people interested in that, those can be analyzed as well. Yes, it looks like there's a Jupiter line. That's the purple line or the pink line over China there, and a vortex there at the bottom, kind of off the eastern shore of India. Yeah.
Okay, let me draw that for you. This one.
Yes, that is a Jupiter vortex off the eastern shore of India.
Okay, so that's where all the tsunamis and, we have this hurricanes and tsunamis happening near that vortex.
Yeah, that is also the place of Andaman and Nicobar. Eh?
No, Andaman and Nicobar should be here. I think so. I'm really bad at geography,
All right.
Very quick question. This black line that you see here, let me draw that. This is which planet?
Pluto.
Ah.
And the cartography we're looking at here is my astrocartography.
Oh, okay. So this is as per your horoscope.
Correct.
Okay, and one more quick question. This line, this green one?
Yes.
That is of which planet?
Venus.
Green is Venus. So that's the reason you're in love with India.
Yeah, and as you can see, the moon line and the Venus are very close to each other, and that is symbolic of the moon and Venus being conjunct in my chart.
Which is the moon line? Which color?
The blue line to the left.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the blue one is moon and the green is Venus.
Yes, and because moon and Venus are conjunct in my chart, you can see how close they are together in the astrocartography.
Okay. Great. Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Sure. This is a large map of the astrocartography of my North American cartography chart, and I wanted to use the example to kind of explain a little bit how the cartography works. I was discussing with Inge earlier how, yes, whether we have awareness, whether we know about it, some of these karmas are unavoidable. And so sometimes, even if you have no understanding of astrocartography, you will very much live your life in alignment with how your cartography goes. And so I just wanted to kind of use an example along my chart to kind of explain how that goes. If you look over in Philadelphia, which is the Northeast United States, you'll notice a golden line. That golden line represents the sun. And so the sun, I have my sun in my place of birth. This sun line, which goes across the Northeast United States, has very strong indications for me. And these indications are very important because the majority of my early life I spent in Philadelphia, where the sun is, my soul's direction, my soul's fulfillment. And of course, the sun has a connection to the father. And so my father has lived in Philadelphia his whole life. So there, it can even show some of those energies. The sun, because of its soul's direction, there's always a strong connection between our past lifetimes and the sun and the moon lines. So it shows in this Northeast United States as well, it might not be my first lifetime in this area. Now, about 3 years ago, I was in my Saturn Mahadasha, and I transitioned from to a Saturn and a Moon subdasha. So I entered a subdasha, and about a week after I entered my subdasha, and this was before I knew my astrocartography, I had moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico to study Ayurveda with Dr. Vasant Lad. You'll notice over in the Midwest here, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a very strong moon line, that blue line, which goes straight through Albuquerque, New Mexico. So just to kind of go over what that means is, without any awareness of my astrocartography, I had moved from my sun line to my moon line within 1 week of going into my moon subdasha, 1 week of going into my moon antardasha. So these lines, they're kind of like magnets. And when the certain dasha periods are in alignment with those magnets, we will get pulled closer to those magnets.
Wow, wow. I think this is so beautiful of integrating the dasha and antardashas with ACG. Fantastic, fantastic. Please go ahead.
And one other thing worth mentioning is that my moon and Venus are in the 9th house of the guru. And so when I moved to Albuquerque, I started studying with Dr. Vasant Lad, with Simon Chikoisky, and now my current teacher, Mahadev Levine. So all of my higher teachings, all of my higher learnings, many of the gurus in my life are located along that moon line. It's really amazing.
Wow, wow, wow. Can you repeat what's there in your 9th house?
I have the moon and Venus in Libra in the 9th house.
Okay.
And so the guru energy is very strong for me along those lines, and it's a very important place for me in terms of my spiritual evolution.
So this green is Venus?
Yes, green is Venus.
Okay, okay. So and that's the time you started with your guru?
Correct.
And they are placed here?
Yes, as soon as I went into my moon antardasha, that is, I moved to Albuquerque 1 week later.
Wow, wow. You are the perfect example for ACG and integrating it into Jyotish with dashas. Because I'm quite sure in Western astrology, they do not have our Vimshotri dasha. They probably have different systems of timing. Wow, yeah. This is beautiful, beautiful. And you're using Lahiri Anamsa only.
What's that?
You're using Lahiri Anamsa?
Yes.
Okay, great. Please continue.
And the natal chart.
Yes.
So another example that just might be worth talking about here, to kind of explain a little bit of somehow of these energies work is, of course, we think of Jupiter, the Guru Deva, as this incredibly benefic force. But depending on the sign it's in and the position it's in, it can have a malefic effect. And I have a good example of how this kind of story goes about. My Jupiter is in the 4th house, which is a very happy house for Jupiter. But my Jupiter is both retrograde and it's in the sign of Taurus. Jupiter is very unhappy in Taurus, and so it creates an enemy position there. And so while there's a great amount of power and spiritual growth by having the Jupiter in the 4th house, it also presents some difficulties because of its enemy sign. I had recently taken a trip to New Orleans, and you can see in the south of the United States along that Jupiter line is the city of New Orleans, which is the purple line.
Purple line is which line? This?
To the east.
This one?
No, the other one. Right, no, a little to the left.
This one?
Yes, that one.
Okay.
And to the south there is the planet, is the city of New Orleans. And so, of course, before I had ever gone anywhere close to my Jupiter line, I was so excited. I think, okay, Jupiter line, this is going to be wonderful. All of the benefic presence of Jupiter in my life, I realized that this is going to be a place of great abundance, of great prosperity, of great joy, based on the understanding of Jupiter. But I wasn't taking into account necessarily the retrograde or enemy position of the Jupiter in my chart. Now, the first night I was in New Orleans, I was robbed for $220. So Taurus, which has its connection to money, it has its connection to our material attachments. Jupiter was trying to teach me a lesson and let go of my attachments and took $220 out of my pocket. My first night in New Orleans, little to say, that kind of it took me a few hours to repair from that, but the New Orleans had recently been hit by Hurricane Katrina. And so I considered it in some compartmentalization a donation to the community there. And I think that was something that Jupiter was trying to teach me as well. But again, the enemy position of Jupiter, the retrograde position of Jupiter, kind of shows that on a material level, the malefic effect that lesson was trying to teach me there.
And I think yours Aquarius Lagna?
What's that, sir?
Your ascendant is Aquarius?
Yes, Aquarius ascendant. And
Jupiter becomes 2nd Lord and 11th Lord.
Yes.
You know, so it's again money, Artha.
Yeah.
Wow, this works, man. This works. This works. Beautiful. You are a great storyteller. Your life is astrology. Your life is astrology personified in your horoscope. Fantastic. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, I mean, let's move on to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so the only thing I want to share here, I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but just like how my moon and Venus energies were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I studied with Dr. Vasant Lad, Simon Chikoisky, and Mahadev Levine, 3 of my gurus. Also, my moon and Venus lines, you'll notice, are in India. And
this is moon? This is Venus.
Yes, and so
Pluto.
Yes. And so even though I haven't been to India yet, I'm planning on going in 2 years when my wife is going to study with Dr. Vasant Lad in Pune, that my guru Amaji, Amritananda Mayima, she is a guru in the south aspect of India. And so it shows that also my guru energies are very strong in that area. And so my Satguru, my greatest guru, Amma, it shows that she is also coming from this aspect of India, that she is also coming from South India, and that when I go to India, I will experience a deep connection with the guru, and it will also be very helpful in my spiritual evolution. But the basic energy there is that those Moon and Venus lines in India there are showing very much so that my guru, Amaji, is right along those lines.
And yours is, you got Venus in the 9th house?
Yes, in Libra.
So that's, if a female, a lady guru?
Yes.
And you have your Venus line right from on the south of India.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's your 8th lord in the 9th house. So that shows a past life connection.
It does. And the moon line always shows a very strong past life connection. It shows wherever your moon line is, metaphysically, you've had many, many past lifetimes there.
Oh, really? No doubt they say moon is the cause of birth.
Yeah, so the moon line might even show some of your more recent or most recent past lifetimes.
Okay. It's passing through Bombay also. So when you come to India, please visit Bombay. I would love to take you around.
It would be my pleasure, Sunil. I would love that.
Okay, fantastic. This is your horoscope and this best example to learn. Please continue.
Let's move on to the next slide. So how do you integrate astrocartography into the ancient Vedic Jyotish science? So in order to align one's cartography with Vedic astrology, the natal chart D1 is the primary chart to be used. So it's important to use the natal chart, the D1, when looking at the astrocartography. When you're looking at the D1, you're comparing all the areas of life, the aims of life, and the karmas affected by the planetary influence in the birth chart, and that is integrated into the planetary astrocartography chart. So one example I have mentioned here is that my sun line goes through Philadelphia, and my sun is in the 10th house. The 10th house has its significations for career and life purpose. And so naturally, does my sun line always help support me in the full realization of these career, life purpose, and Artha energies. Another example that we went over earlier is that my moon and Venus are in the 9th house, and that some of my gurus, my primary teachers, Dr. Vasant Lad, Mahadev Levine, they are where my moon line is, and that is in the 9th house. So again, to take the energies from the birth chart and to look at how they relate to the energies in the astrocartography and to kind of find the understanding there.
Okay.
So now I'd like to discuss some basic planetary significations for these different astro lines. These are really important. Of course, again, it's recommended when making any great decisions in terms of your geographic travel that you don't just use your own interpretation of the astrocartography. Even myself as an astrologer, if I'm planning on going somewhere, I should probably consult somebody else to get their understanding, because I cannot even be unbiased about my own chart. For example, I thought that the Jupiter line was going to be incredibly benefic, but when I got there, I got robbed. So, we have to take into account some of these different energies that might be in effect, and sometimes our bias might get in the way of that.
True. Very true. Very true.
Now, the first planet I want to go over in terms of discussing the planetary significations for the cartography is the sun. Metaphysically, the sun is connected to the soul's direction, the soul's fulfillment. Without looking specifically at the natal chart where your sun is in your astro cartography, this should be a place you are happy. This should be a place where you should shine. This should be a place where you can come into power, where you can come into responsibility, where you can come into leadership. Sometimes these energies of the sun line have indications for fame. They have indications for leadership, of power. And on a very deep level, because of the sun's connection to the soul's direction, achieving our potential, achieving one's potential. The soul's direction is connected to the soul's affinity. So where the sun line is where the soul should be happy, is where the soul should be satisfied. So the sun line naturally shows sometimes your soul's affinity to a specific area. And this is important because it shows past lifetimes. Your soul does not have an affinity to any particular area for no reason. The reason that the soul has an affinity for one specific area is because in past lifetimes, it doesn't mean that we spent the majority of a past lifetime in this area, but it just meant that when we were there in a past lifetime, that is where our soul was happy. That is where our soul is satisfied. So it shows a natural affinity to the soul. Now, obviously, not every planetary line carries just positive qualities. And so where the sun line is, it causes heat. So in the Ayurvedic sense, the sun line can cause pitta dosha imbalances. Even though the sun line presents all these better metaphysical qualities, depending on the position and the dignity of the sun, and the Shadbala, it can cause pitta vikriti. And so this is very helpful in understanding if you are a pitta dominant or pitta vitiated individual, spending a long time at your sun line may only increase that pitta vitiation. So a sun line might be better for a kapha type dosha than a pitta type dosha. And this is bringing a little bit of the medical Jyotish.
But that's so beautiful, Kṣaṇāti. That's so beautiful. I mean, now we come to know many people when they travel and shift to another city or another country, suddenly their health issues crop up, or heat issues and all that. Now I can understand. Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I've had so many of my clients that are suffering with health issues. And it's generally connected towards, obviously Saturn. If Saturn isn't in a particularly good position, just being close to your Saturn line causes you to age. So if you want to unaccelerate the aging process, you want to be as far away from your Saturn line as possible, because the closer you are, and there are exceptions to this, but pretty much that Saturn line causes you to get closer to death. And so you have to be, and I've also noticed with a lot of clients, Sun and Mars, especially with the Pitta dominant individuals, they end up having Pitta issues, frustration, irritation, and I've even had a client whose whole skin has broken out in rashes, just from being too close to their Mars line. So just this energy of the Pitta aggravation that can come with these fiery planets. Additionally, just some other energies that can come from the sun. The sun line can cause stress. It can cause a unfavorable balance of ego or excess ego, foolish pride, anger, and too much responsibility. So yes, the sun line might give you responsibility, but just because it gives you that responsibility doesn't mean you're prepared to handle it. So there's a real... I like to discuss, yes, the favorable, the spiritual, positive aspects, but also some of the difficulties that can arise with these lines.
That's correct. That's correct.
When it comes to the moon line, on the deepest level, it represents the divine mother, divine love, unconditional love, compassion, the mother, sympathy, empathy, devotion, compassion. It has a strong connection to our past life energies, where we are coming from past lives, and can actually show our most recent past life. So it doesn't necessarily, of course, there are always exceptions, but a lot of time it can show our recent past lives and where we were coming from. So it has all of these positive qualities of the Divine Mother, the Mother, unconditional love, compassion, devotion. It's a great place for devotional practices. It's a great place where the family can be emphasized because of the moon's Cancer, its natural association with the fourth house and the home and the mother. All of these energies can really be empowered and embraced along the moon line. Now, of course, depending on the difficulty of the moon in the natal chart, it can also cause some malefic effects, such as lust. There's an ancient mythological story of the moon sleeping with Jupiter's wife. And so even these energies of lust and not being able to control our desires and not being able to control our feelings, because the moon is based on the connection between the heart and the mind. And so if there is not a balance in this area, it can cause some difficulties in this area. Indulgence, lust are two of those. And in general, because of the moon's connection to the mind, it can either be a place where you feel very mentally and emotionally stable and balanced if the moon is in positive position. But if the moon is in difficult position, it can show a place of mental and emotional stress. It can even trigger things like mental disorders such as schizophrenia or obsessive compulsive disorder.
Wow.
You know, Inge, if you noticed, what caught my attention was a line from Kṣaṇāti, where he said about moon and past life connection.
Yes.
And I'm missing today the database I had few charts where it was recorded birth time, recorded story of previous lifetime, and also the birth horoscope, birth time of the previous lifetime, and even this life. I remember discussing a particular case with Stephen Stuckey 10 years back. Stephen Stuckey is from USA, genius of an astrologer, good friend. And I've lost that particular case. If anybody has documented cases of past life where people have remembered their past life.
There is one case documented by Ken Rao. Ken Rao cases have been documented.
Yeah.
He has written a book, Karma and Astrology.
Karma and
there are
astrology.
5-6 examples in his book.
Yes, yes. And Stephen had another case, and I think there were a case or two in astrodatabank.com. What we should do, maybe in the future as a research point, okay, one of us should take it up, is check whether their moon line is coming from that country or city.
I love it. That is amazing. Yeah.
You know, so these cases and this would be the most ideal example. I mean, I'm not saying all cases 100% it would match. Somewhere lordship would come, somewhere moon as a planet will come, somewhere all those kind of things. But I think that's a beautiful virgin area for research. Past life astrology and astrocartography.
Yeah, along those lines, and this is just a personal example, but I was studying with Amaji, and but at one of her events, and I was talking to one of her people who study under her, and I was deciding very young what mantra that I was going to be receiving, and the Rishi said, I am seeing right now that you have past lifetimes as a sadhu in India along the, and that you were an ascetic and you are a sadhu and you're coming back in this lifetime to have certain energies that will allow you to live a more traditional life with a family because you didn't have that in a past lifetime, with money because you didn't have that in a past lifetime. But that I see you as I see your past life as a sadhu in India, and so my moon line, yes, right across there. And so and when I first started studying Hinduism, it immediately resonated with me that Shiva is my primary energy that I am constantly serving, constantly devoting myself to. Om Namah Shivaya. So it is. That's just from my personal experience, is that moon line there showing my connection as a sadhu in India in past lifetimes.
Fantastic, fantastic. I mean, this makes real sense, real sense.
Okay, so two other planetary energies that are worth discussing is the planet of Mars. Now, wherever your Mars line is, you're going to be busy. All of my astrocartography clients, wherever they have their Mars line, they are so busy, sometimes too busy, where they become overworked, depleted, stressed. Now, of course, if Mars is in Capricorn, it's exalted, you'll have all the energy you need in order to fulfill these certain energies. But depending on the position of Mars, that Mars line can be particularly malefic. So of all of the lines, the Mars line can be, unless it's in a favorable position in the chart, in a good friend, or in an exaltation, it can often cause difficulties. But wherever your Mars line is, you will be busy. You will have to put things into action. You will need to be energetic. It is a place where you need to activate and you should be courageous. It is usually a place associated with adventure. Sometimes there's a connection to the siblings because of the connection between Mars and sibling energy. And again, busy, busy, busy. There will not, when you're close to your Mars line, if you like being busy, it can be a really good place for you to be successful and prosperous. Let's say Mars is in your second house. Let's say Mars is in your 10th house. Let's say Mars is in your 11th house. This place, you will be very busy, and it can help with your prosperity and your success, your career and art energies. But sometimes it can cause a very difficult effect. And the Pitta aggravation that shows up in the Mars line is generally a little more severe than the Pitta aggravation that shows up in the Sun line. So it's important when you go to a place where the Mars line is that you're considering, okay, my Pitta is going to be aggravated no matter what I do. So am I able to handle that? Am I given, is Mars in a positive position? Is Mars my Mahadasha? Is Mars my Antardasha? Because if these energies are not aligning properly, this could be a very difficult place where you're overworked, overstressed, irritable, restless, and discontent. Now, it's a place where there's a great amount of passion, where you can follow your passions, intensity. It's a great place for investigation from the 8th house energy, investigation of the unknown, exploring new things, transformation. It's a good place for transformation, advancement, progression. Mars is the planet which bears support. Mars is the planet which bears welfare. So it is very important that if Mars is in a positive position, being close to a Mars line means you could receive a lot of support by other people, by other energies, that it is a place you can receive a great amount of support. But again, it's a great place of Pitta aggravation. Competitiveness always comes up. They will always find yourself finding relationships that may feel competitive, that take away from your energy, because competition, while it can be positive, it can also be a very difficult energy to have to compete with people you would prefer to be your friends. And also, because of this Mars energy, it can cause anger, irritability, inflammation, these things that relate to Pitta Vikriti. And because Mars has a very tamasic energy, it can also, if it's not in a good position, unlock our more animalistic instincts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So there are some definitely positives to the Mars energy when we want to be busy, when we want to be action, when we want to advance. But there has to be it's important that there's a good amount of understanding that there will be some physical, mental, and spiritual Pitta aggravation, as well as some Rajasic and Tamasic influence when we get close to that Venus line.
Right. So now it's Venus.
Yes,
Where
Venus.
will I found the love of my life? The big question everybody is asking.
Yes, and I think we should do another PowerPoint just focused on how to support love, how to support the romance, and how to look for that. But in general, the Venus line will always bring up these energies of love, romance, both romantic love, both the love we have for our partner, but also unconditional love, also platonic love. So the love we may have for our brother or sister or mother or father or grandparent, the love we may have for a close friend. These energies of love are always emphasized. Also, because of the Venus energy, its association with Taurus in the second house, there's a strong indication that the Venus line brings up our energies as relates to wealth. So our financial karmas are usually released and showed by the Venus line as well. In the ancient Vedic text, it says that Venus rules all opposing forces of duality. And while this sounds like a metaphysical concept, it's very integrated into the Astro Cartography. Now, of course, if your Venus is exalted, you'll experience much more of the positive side of the duality. But let's say that your Venus is debilitated. It's in an enemy position. It's in an unhappy house. That a lot of times you can experience the opposite spectrums of this duality. So because Venus rules duality, it rules happiness, but it also rules sadness. So depending on the position of the Venus, it can be a really happy place, or it can be a really sad place, or it might be a place where you have to experience the duality. It might be a place where you have to experience all the duality of life, pleasure and pain, happiness and sadness, health and sickness, joy and suffering, yin and yang. And so wherever the Venus energy is, we think, oh, love and romance and all of these things are certainly included. But there's also this other side of the duality, which can be the challenge. Yes, love, marriage, relationship, all of these energies are amazing, but it also includes the breakup, the separation, the wanting to love somebody but not having that. So just this energy of duality that really shows up along the Venus line.
You know, this is something new for me in terms of duality being associated with Venus, and it started me thinking. I was thinking, you know, there are so many people who sometimes have a dual love life. You know, they might be married, they love their husband, but also they have a real love outside that. You know, we need to take up those, take up that as a research point and see how their Venus is, where it is placed, and, you know, is it going through the same city or something, or even the triangles, you know, because in Bollywood here, they say the sure shot formula for a movie to be a success is a triangle love story. You know, a triangle love story. Person loves this one, but that person does not love him back. She loves somebody else, you know, and he loves somebody else altogether. So that triangle love story, you know, I mean, basically I'm just going crazy with astrocartography. It's been the love of my life for a long time, and I'm not gone ahead and studied because of, you know, the symbols with the softwares. You know, they used to have this Western glyphs, symbols. I could never understand that. I had even bought SJS, Jyotish star, but I could never take it forward. I then had it uninstalled. I'm gonna do that again. Thank you. Please go ahead. Sorry. I mean, I'm just getting ideas because this is something so new.
Yeah.
The duality part.
And I think it's amazing. I think we should do as much research on this area as possible because, it can show. Okay, so another energy that's worth mentioning here is the Venus rules love, right? I actually met my wife at the Ayurvedic Institute, which is right where my Venus line was. And there in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I asked Amaji if she would marry us. And so Amaji married us. We got permission to be married, and I met my wife right next to my Venus line. So, and
let me try and find out where that city is.
Santa Fe is right near Albuquerque.
Here right somewhere?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's the blue line. That's your Venus line.
That's my moon line, but the Venus and the moon are both really strong there.
Oh, this one, the green one is your.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is your Venus line,
Yeah.
this green one, and right next to it is Santa Fe.
Yes.
Oh.
And that is where I met my wife, and we just got married on July 10th by Amaji. So.
Blessing, yeah, that's a blessing. Fantastic. How beautiful it was. And can I ask, what was the Antardasha?
I was in Saturn moon.
Oh, so the blue one is the moon.
Yes, and because my moon is conjunct with Venus, when the moon becomes activated, the Venus does too.
Yeah, this is magic. Yeah, this is magic. I believe this is absolutely the deeper level of taking next step for our astrology. I really want Indians to learn this science. Please go ahead.
Go back one slide. Okay, good. So just to touch on a few more points of Venus that along the lines of duality, there's beauty. On the positive side, pleasure, harmony. Venus wants us to be in balance and harmony with ourselves, with the plants, with the animals, with the universe. Balance, moderation, joy, happiness, refinement, sophistication. Wherever our Venus line, it gives us an opportunity to become more refined, more sophisticated. When I spent my time in New Mexico, I became a much more moderate person, a much more balanced person. As I was studying Ayurveda, I learned how to do this exactly. But just being close to that Venus line will bring you to the most refined and sophisticated version of yourselves. Now,
Could I ask, when you shifted to that place, you said New Mexico, right?
Yes.
By any chance, of course, I do not know where your other planets are, so I can be wrong. By any chance, did you start pranayam or did you do more pranayam during that place, that period?
Yes, I actually had a daily pranayam practice where I was doing pranayam for up to 2 hours per day every morning at sunrise.
Okay. I took it from your Venus because your Venus is in an Aries sign.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that was a very far off guess. I just took the shot. Okay, please continue.
Yeah, so I love pranayama. My favorite is the Ujjayi.
Okay.
Yeah, so I love the pranayama. So these are all the positive sides of the Venus energy, but also they're much more difficult on the other side of the duality. Like you said, the triangle of love. How does that show up? Venus shows up as temptation. Venus rules the senses, and so it's also a connection towards the temptation of the senses. In order for us to become more refined, more sophisticated, in order for our senses to evolve, they have to be tempted. And so there's always a strong energy of temptation and indulgence, being ruled or controlled by your senses. So there can be addiction issues that show up near a Venus line. Hedonistic, which means pleasure seeking, putting pleasure above all other things. Love and wealth disturbances, as well as sadness and extremism because of these energies of duality. And of course, if Venus is in a positive position in the chart, has high dignity, you'll receive more of these positive aspects by being close to your Venus line. And you will still receive some of the positive aspects if Venus is debilitated or in a malefic position, but you will also definitely struggle with some of these more difficult parts as well. Okay, the next two planets I would like to discuss are Mercury and Jupiter. Now, when it comes to the Mercury line, in a lot of charts, it's obviously very close to the Sun line in many charts in the cartography because very often the Mercury and the Sun are very close together. They like to travel together. But where that Mercury line is on the deepest levels is where you become a messenger. We all have a message that we carry, and wherever the Mercury line is, it's coming to understand what that message is. Before we can ever convey what our message is, before we can ever express what our message is, we have to come to understand what is our message. So there's always a strong energy of coming to realize the internal message, coming to understand the internal message. And depending on the Mahadasha or the Antardasha supporting that, the expression of that message, the communication of that message. Mercury is associated with buddhi in Sanskrit, which is the discretionary factor of our consciousness. So it's connected to the logic, to the intelligence, to the intellect. So wherever the Mercury line is, it is a special energy where our intelligence or our logic or the intellectual faculties of our consciousness are going to be empowered, and they're going to be more emphasized. So, for example, my Mercury line is in the Northeast United States, where is close to Philadelphia, which is my birthplace. And as it turns out, I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, all in that area. So while Jupiter may represent certain aspects of higher education as well as the ninth house, the Mercury has a strong indication here for learning how your mind works, learning how your intellect functions, learning how you communicate. I learned how to read and I learned how to write near that line. I learned how to speak. So all these energies of coming to understand how your intellect functions and then putting it into action, these energies can very often show up near the Mercury line.
Okay. Well, Mercury is which color here in this map?
Green.
This one, the traditional green. And that's it's passing through Philadelphia.
Yes.
Philadelphia is here. Inge, do you have any questions for Mercury?
Yes,
Or
I have one question, because they're coming up and they are going straight down. So they travel quite a long way. Yeah?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and for example, even you kind of look at which lines are closest. For example, Philadelphia is really close to the sun, but the Mercury line is very close to the sun line, and so it's also going to have a powerful influence over that area. But let's say you pick a place a lot more south, such as Raleigh, North Carolina, even though that it's, or Florida, let's say Tampa, for example, which is off the coast there. Let's say you choose there. You're in between these two lines. There's actually no lines there. And so in some sense, you could say your area there is neutral, that Florida might be neutral for you there. But because Jupiter is there in the west and that the sun line is there in the northeast, they're also having an influence over that area. So even though while it might appear neutral in some place like Florida or Atlanta, that because they're sandwiched between these other energies, they're also, those planets are going to have more of an effect than other planets in that area.
All right. And the closer you go towards any of those lines, the more will be the effect of that particular line.
Correct, like a magnet.
Like you are going closer to Jupiter, that will become active. And on the other hand, the sun attributes or the Mercury attributes.
Yes, and let's say you're within a 1 or 2 states close to the line, then that planetary karma is inescapable, that it is emphasized as inescapable.
Oh, speak it one more time, please.
So let's say in Washington, D.C., it's close to the sun line, but it's not directly on the sun line. And so even though it will be having a heavy influence, that a lot of the other aspects of the chart will also be having a play. But when you get closer to Philadelphia, it's saying, okay, the primary energy is the sun, which means even though all of your other chart energies are playing out, the sun energy is inescapable. It is going to be, you could say, emphasize 75% over the other energies.
Wow.
Okay, let me ask the most stupid question. I know we have diverted from the planets. We're going to come back to the planets. Okay. What about an area like this? Would it be a mess?
So when it comes to those extremely intersected lines, these are areas where so they say that certain areas you go through more karma than others. And so when you get an area like this, you have to go through so much karma here. And there's so many different planetary karmas. So in energies like this, all of your planetary karmas, positive, negative, benefic, malefic, they're all emphasized and accelerated. So this is like running through your karma instead of walking through it.
Okay.
It can be very difficult.
So whenever a person is gonna feel bored in his life, may access that regions, yeah?
Yeah, and you will notice that there's so much going on and so many different lessons that it can be very difficult, because unless you're a very enlightened person, these energies are hard to separate, and so it can cause a lot of confusion, especially with the malefic lines. But yeah, these energies are places where the karma is accelerated.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go back on Mercury.
Yeah, if you're bored, then go there and you will certainly experience a change of taste.
I am certainly not bored at all. Just was a good point.
Yeah, that's it. Next, yeah, this one.
So in addition to the intellectual aspects of the Mercury line, because of its connection to Gemini, it has an indication for social success, for social ability, for social prosperity. A lot of my friends come from that region of the Northeast of the United States, and so it shows an ability for social success and social ability. It's a place for innovation, versatility, understanding, communication, expression. Mercury is joyful, has a great sense of humor. So it's a good place to have a laugh. It's a good place to smile and giggle a little bit, maybe to experience some comedy. For example, perhaps my friends in the Northeast United States are a little bit funnier than my friends in the Western United States. Again, it's a special indication for reading, writing, speaking, and learning, especially lower education versus higher education. But as we mentioned, Mercury can travel very close to the sun, and Mercury can become combust. And when Mercury becomes combust, or it's in a difficult position, the intellectual aspect of our consciousness becomes challenged. And so depending on the position of Mercury, how many degrees it is close to the sun, it can cause confusion. It can cause blocked expression. It can cause communication difficulties, social difficulties, sarcasm, incorrect speech, perfectionism. So again, if Mercury is in a really good position, in a strong position, and it's not combust, being close to that Mercury line can be really helpful. But if Mercury is heavily combust or debilitated, then being close to that Mercury line can cause more difficulties to the intellectual aspect of our consciousness than good.
Brilliant.
Now, moving on to the Jupiter line, Jupiter Guru Deva, the great guru. Jupiter lines are associated with spiritual growth. They're associated with expansion. They're associated with higher learning, especially spiritual education, but also includes any type of graduate education or the most higher forms of education. It also has a special indication for morals and ethics. You learning what your morals and ethics are and experiencing morals and ethics and coming to find your values and principles as relates to morals and ethics. There's a special connection to religion. There's a special connection to the general aspects of Jupiter, which is expansion, prosperity, abundance, joy, and comfort. And we mention a lot of the positive qualities of Jupiter, and no matter where Jupiter is, it will give you spiritual growth. It will give you spiritual expansion. It will show you morals and ethics, and it will show you spiritual and religious energies. But depending on its position, its dignity, mine's retrograde, we talked about an example in my chart that instead of necessarily the traditional benefic expressions, if it's in a malefic place, yes, it'll be causing spiritual growth, spiritual education, but it might not be, you might not be learning it the way you would like. It might not be learning in a classroom. It might not be learning at the feet of the guru, but it might be learning by getting $200 taken out of your back pocket. So this energy here of Jupiter, depending on its dignity, depending on its position, always teaching us, always encouraging us to grow, always encouraging us to evolve and to become our highest moral and ethical self and what we believe in. But depending on its position, can do that in a difficult way. So this is that functional benefic, functional malefic energy that sometimes astrologers like to talk about. My Jupiter, while it's a benefic planet, is functionally malefic. So some of the ways that Jupiter teaches me aren't always that soft. Some of the difficult energies that come out of that, Jupiter can be lazy. There's a strong kapha energy that is associated with Jupiter. Spiritual confusion, spiritual delusion, being misled along the spiritual path, or believing in certain dogmas, certain things that are religious overzealotism or extremism, radical spiritual thinking, that sometimes when Jupiter's in a difficult position, it can cause a more radical or extreme spiritual approach. But no matter what, no matter whose chart it is, where your Jupiter line, that's where many spiritual lessons await you.
Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. What I love about your presentation, Kṣaṇāti, is you have taken the positive aspects of the planet and the not so positive aspects, integrated it beautifully with this. Fantastic. Very happy.
Thank you, because it's important, I feel, because even though a planet may be benefic or malefic, if that malefic planet has positive dignity and in good position, it will act benefic. If that benefic planet has bad position and bad dignity, it will act malefic. So when looking over these significations, it's very important to go over what are the positives and negatives, because you won't really know how that planet is affecting your karma. You won't really know how that astro cartography is affecting your karma till you look at its planetary position in the natal chart.
Okay.
Now, let's get into Saturn, Rahu Ketu, my favorite energies to talk about. So when we get into Saturn, now, in the ancient text, it says no real spiritual growth or change manifests without Saturn. No real positive growth takes place without the work of Saturn. And the reason behind this is the only way to truly grow is to be challenged, is to be tested, is to have to go through certain difficulties. We only know we are an honest person when our honesty is tested. We only know we are a patient person when our patience is tested, when our patience is challenged. We only know we're an accepting or a humble person when someone is trying to put something in front of us that is difficult to accept. So, and this is the way that the Saturn line kind of works, in that there's a great amount of spiritual growth that takes place along the Saturn lines, but it is 100% associated with challenge, lessons, and tests. For people who may be ruled by Saturn in their lagna or have Saturn in a favorable position in their chart and are on a spiritual path, the Saturn line can be very positive for spiritual growth. But for people who don't necessarily have a good karmic relationship with Saturn, it is probably the line that you want to stay the farthest away from. Saturn is a strong connection with the Vata dosha. And so when it comes to the Saturn line, it can be horribly destructive to the Vata dosha. It will always increase Vata dosha, and it will always increase the aging process. Again, Saturn lines are better for Kapha type people, for who can handle this increase in Vata. But for someone who has strong Vata constitution or Vata Vikriti, it can only make it worse. And so it's very important to keep the level of Vata in your dosha in your mind when going close to the Saturn line, as well as your ability and willingness to receive challenges and tests and obstacles in order for your spiritual growth. Saturn is represented as the servant sometimes, and in this sense, you may become a servant as you get closer to your Saturn line, a servant to your spiritual growth, a servant to your lessons, a servant to your tests, a servant to your challenges. Saturn is the humbler of the ego in certain senses and wants to remove the ego. And in order to do that, it puts us in a position where our ego is knocked out, beaten up, walked on, stepped over. And so there's these energies that can come out of the Saturn line, which is, it says in the ancient text that the dark shadow of Saturn is so great that even it covers over the light of the sun. And so wherever your Saturn line is, it can very much put too great a shadow over the sun, which is the ego, the true fulfillment of the soul's potential. So it can be very difficult. It is really great energy for those that are seeking humility, self-sacrifice, separation, isolation. It's the perfect place for an ascetic. It's the perfect place for a monk. It's the perfect place for a person that wants to be alone. Again, being close to your Saturn line helps you become a more virtuous person, more accepting, more honest, more patient, more humble, but it's going to put you through a lot of challenges in order to get there. So if patience is something that Saturn wants you to work on in this lifetime, when you get close to your Saturn line, get ready to have your patience tested on a daily basis. When you overcome those challenges, you will become more patient. When you overcome those lessons, you will become more virtuous. And so there's a strong indication for spiritual growth. It is a place that helps with the discipline. It is a place that helps with our determination, our ability to set our minds to something and to stay devoted to it, our steadfastness, hard work, progress, and development. There's a lot of positive qualities, especially when Saturn is in a positive position or the individual has a positive connection to Saturn, that it can really cause a lot of positive growth. But for most people, it is a malefic function. And so this malefic function is extremely disturbing to the Vata dosha, causes separation and isolation. And so again, that is good for someone who's on an independent spiritual path. But if these are social people, if these are family-oriented or community-oriented people, the Saturn line will only cause separation and isolation from those things. Saturn has a strong connection to sorrow and sadness, can cause sadness. Saturn moves very slowly. And so when you're near a Saturn line, all of the energies and lessons and growths, they're all taking place at a snail's pace. They're all moving very slowly, very steadily. So this is an energy. So again, the two highlight emphases there are challenging karma. Yes, test, obstacles, lessons, and challenges. These can be really great for spiritual work, but they can also be very disturbing to the Vata dosha and encourage very strong sadness, separation, isolation energies.
Fantastic, fantastic. I would like to ask a question on Saturn, but at the end of this session. But please continue.
Okay, so Rahu Ketu, when we look at the nodes of the moon and their placement in the cartography, it is so fascinating. It is one of the more energies that are really worth exploring because, again, there's a strong indication here between the foreign, the exotic, the mystical, and the non-traditional. These can come from the Rahu vibration. Of course, I'm talking about the positive sides. Let's say Rahu's in an exaltation. Let's say someone has a strong karmic relationship to Rahu. Rahu's in one of its own signs. That these places are places that generally you've always wanted to go to, but your soul hasn't gone to them yet. These are places that your soul wants to travel, but the soul has not been there yet. And so there's a strong connection here between exploration of the unknown, the foreign, the exotic, the mystical, and the non-traditional. During my wife's Rahu Mahadasha, within a few months of entering her Rahu Mahadasha, she moved to New Zealand. New Zealand was where her Rahu vortex was. So without any awareness of her cartography or even her Jyotish chart at that time, as soon as she went into Rahu Mahadasha, she moved to New Zealand for 6 years. So it is this place that your soul wants to explore. It wants to investigate. It is non-traditional. New Zealand couldn't be more far away from the United States. So it's this energy of exploration, investigation, experiencing the unknown, the non-traditional, the mystical. These comes from the Rahu vibration. From the Ketu vibration, you can also experience a lot of magic, a lot of fantasy, a lot of there's a special indication for Ketu and moksha. And there's the positive side of moksha, which is liberation, enlightenment. But in order for us to be liberated, we have to let go of our attachments. We have to let go of our desires. And so generally where these Rahu Ketu lines are, it can be very helpful in terms of us letting go of certain things that are preventing us from moksha. But at the same time, if we want to hold on to these things while we're near these lines, Ketu does not have any issue ripping these things away. And so Ketu will happily just rip whatever attachments that are preventing you from moksha away. And the closer you get to these node lines, the closer this, I like to call it angel, Ketu, will be trying to take these attachments away from you. There are strong associations of illumination, coming to see visions, liberation, transcendence, seeing the Maya, experiencing the Maya, the illusion, always a unique energy. Because of Rahu Ketu, there's always chaos and unpredictability associated there. So where these node lines are, it is always unpredictable. The only way that you can be truly happy when you're close to these node lines is when you live life one day at a time. Just like with the Rahu Ketu vibration. If you live life in the future, Rahu will cause great chaos. If you live life in the past, Rahu will cause great chaos to you. So it can be a really positive, exciting, fun. Rahu likes to party. It can be a really fun place for if you're living a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, be here now consciousness, and could be one of the most difficult places, one of the most destructive and confusing places when we're worrying about understanding the past or controlling the future. So there's also these energies of nervousness, worry, anxiety, depression, confusion, because usually near those node lines, you're meant to be living life in the moment. And if you're not, it'll cause a lot of these more difficult energies. And just to kind of summarize it, very often near the node line, you have to learn things the hard way. Someone can tell you, your mom, your dad, your guru, they can tell you, this is not a good idea. I think this bad thing is going to happen. And they may be 100% right. But when it comes to the Rahu Mahadasha or the Rahu cartography lines, you are going to have to learn it for yourself.
Oh my God.
Good that you mentioned that in the end.
I mean that I'm quite sure everyone would like to avoid it unless we want to get into real spiritual practice, which is living in the moment.
Yeah.
That's tough, very tough, very tough. Anyway, fantastic.
One interesting thing along those lines is with successful musicians, they often find a lot of traveling musicians often find a lot of success in their Rahu Ketu Astro Cartography line.
Really?
Yeah, because I guess it's a place where usually, like for example, the band may be from America, but they may have their node line in Japan. And they go to Japan and they become a big success or hit in Japan. So there's this energy as well as from the Rahu receiving material success, that there can be a lot of foreign success when it comes to these lines.
Wow. That's something, Ingi, if you could note, maybe, Kṣaṇāti might have some database, or you could also dig up from Astro Data Bank with musicians
that is the question. Only musicians or all sort of extreme creative people?
I would say all sorts of creative people will find foreign success. Now, of course, if Rahu is in Taurus, Aquarius, it will be a lot better than other positions. You should generally receive foreign and exotic success near these lines, especially when Rahu or Ketu are in a good position.
We need to check, maybe in the future, we need to check the Beatles.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea.
Yeah. They became famous during their journey in Germany.
Sorry?
Their fame didn't click as long as they were in England. They came to Germany, into Hamburg. They played into one club, and click, they became famous. Yes. So.
So it's something, something we should. I mean, this is a virgin area full of ideas. I'm so excited. It's like a 13-year-old dream that I'm able to live now today. I'm so excited. It's just that my dear friend Juliana, is so camera shy. She will not come on camera. So this is the best thing that's happening. I mean, so many ideas. I mean, this musician thing, Kṣaṇāti, you're great. You're a genius. Yeah. I mean, absolutely great.
This is such an honor for me, and I'm having so much fun together.
Serious fun. I mean, you're going to revolutionize how Indians are going to think now, because we have not used ACG. I've been wanting them to use ACG. I've been wanting them to use so many techniques of the Western astrology, that can actually benefit somebody who's like, I want you to do a case study, a presentation on health. Somebody who's been suffering from health for so many years, he or she shifted. We can get so many cases from Astro Data Bank also. He or she shifted. That agony is over. Of course, the dasha, antardasha will really aggravate it further.
Yeah.
But let's assume the dasha, antardasha is not coming immediately. But still, if you shift, what is the observation? How much health improvement happened?
Yeah, it's amazing. And some of my clients, I look at their cartography and they're like, my health is horrible. And I already know they're on their Saturn line before I even look at it. I'm like,
of course.
And then
you get the experience now.
Yeah.
You're intuitive level.
This is brilliant. Yeah, Kṣaṇāti.
Yeah, I just think, and my one client, she moved from her Saturn line, and of course she started having other issues that had nothing to do with her health, but her health completely improved. So sometimes if your karma is difficult, maybe you're going from one difficult karma to another difficult karma. Because we discussed the karma is inescapable, but sometimes it's, especially when our health, if you don't have your health, it's hard to really have the opportunity to work on your karma. So it's very important that I think that the health is the right place to live can be very supported with astrocartography.
In that sense, I may ask a question. Will it be helpful in such a case where health tremendously goes down, for example, to move into one of those neutral areas? Yeah?
Definitely. And you also want to find the planet which has the most benefic
influence
energy and be close to there as well. Yeah.
You know, I was speaking to Edith Hathaway, and we were discussing one particular line we discussed on astrocartography in the last interview. I do not know if you watched it. Eighth Lord's line, where it is going, also could be the line of transformation and many other areas, you know. Anyway, please continue. I'm just so non-organized today. I'm just so excited like a kid. You know, hey man, I got my lollipop after 13 years.
I feel like we're just getting started, and this is going
to just getting started. Trust me.
Yeah.
This series is going to blow the market. People are going to be blown out. People are going to be blown out with this new knowledge, with example horoscopes. Okay, today it's going to be more of a base, preparing a base for them. But we're going to do serious researches in this. And Inge, I want you to be, you know, spearheading this with Kṣaṇāti.
I'm fascinated. I'm absolutely fascinated by the topic. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And as soon as this interview is over, I will jump over to that software.
I did that 13 years back. I remember now. It is Adonis, difficult for me to pronounce, Astro.com, Liz Green, and they had, you know, done it. But anyway, I know they have that feature is there. Only thing, the glyphs, I don't know how to pronounce it, the glyphs, the symbols, what was making me very confused. Even till date, I do not know how to use Western symbols for the planets. You know, it's like a nervous block. All right, we are on Rahu Ketu, learning things the hard way.
Yeah, I think that kind of explains both the positive sides. Okay, so how to encourage Artha? Yeah, so today, even though we spent a lot of time kind of introducing the topic of cartography and some of the different planetary energies and kind of how to understand how the cartography works, I wanted to give a couple examples of how people have experienced the aim of life Artha and career prosperity and success in relationship to the astrocartography. Now, both of the examples I have here today, neither of these people follow Vedic astrology or astrocartography. We're just looking at it as an example as to how their lives and their successes have aligned to these different cartographies. So in order to do that, first we find where in the birth chart, what are the primary energies that are influencing Artha and career energies in their chart. You have the second house, you have the 10th house, sometimes you have the 6th house. You want to consider the rulers of those houses, what planets are in those houses, and also general energies that we'll look at to kind of support, show how these planetary lines have a very strong influence over the ability to be prosperous and successful, as well as achieve financial prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that we've kind of gone over, but just to emphasize again, it is not necessarily any one planet that is good for the career, is good for prosperity, is good for Artha. It depends on the bulla of the planet, the dignity of the planet, if the planet is acting functionally benefic or malefic, and its position. So it's not really now obviously the Sun line, the Jupiter line, all of these lines that if they're in association with Artha and in a positive position, they will certainly help. But it's not any one planet that will support Artha, and it's not any one planet that will support career more than others. It's as much about understanding it specifically with each individual horoscope. with each individual birth chart. So I have a couple examples here to kind of explain how these charts are contrasted together.
Right.
Barack Obama, our current president of the United States, born August 4th, 1961. Now, over here on the right, we have his birth chart. As you can see, he's a Capricorn ascendant, and his Saturn retrograde, Capricorn ascendant. So it's a really unique Saturn energy there as his lagna. And the Jupiter is also retrograde, and it is in his lagna. And when Jupiter is in Capricorn, it enters a debilitated state. So this will show a really interesting effect on Barack Obama and his ability to achieve success within his career. Now, we mentioned earlier that he has a Jupiter. One second. He has a Jupiter retrograde debilitated lagna, and this is one second. Can you go to the next slide, actually?
Okay.
Okay, great. So Obama has a Jupiter retrograde debilitated ascendant. And when Jupiter enters Capricorn, it becomes debilitated. But in some of the ancient texts that I've studied, that when a planet is both debilitated and retrograde, that it acts exalted. And so
it's mentioned in Deepika, if I'm not wrong.
So there are two negatives making a positive, so to speak, energy here. And the Saturn retrograde in Capricorn shows Obama's political emphasis. Saturn is often associated with politics and political prioritization, and so it shows a very strong political orientation. And the Saturn retrograde is that his political orientation is not necessarily the traditional political orientation. Obama has done a lot of things as president that are non-traditional, that other presidents would have not considered or wanted to done. He has provided free health care for the United States, and this was something that retrograde Saturn, along with the Jupiter that's conjunct and acting exalted, kind of shows some of the very unique ideals that Obama has been expressing. Now, because this Jupiter is acting exalted, it provides a certain amount of auspiciousness. Now, if we go back and look at exactly Barack Obama's chart, it is important to understand that Barack Obama entered his Jupiter Mahadasha July 1996.
Correct.
Now, Obama became a state senator and then a United States senator during his Jupiter Mahadasha. And all of his success has taken place, or the growth and prosperity as it relates to his political career has taken success in his Jupiter Mahadasha, which was from 1996 to 2012.
Mm-hmm.
If you look on the cartography in the city of Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
you will notice Obama's Jupiter lines.
This map is a bit small for me. Inge, can you point out?
Yeah, I try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jupiter line is the blue line, right?
No,
No, this is the moon line. This is the moon
There's a
line. Which is the
pink line
Jupiter line?
here, right?
Yeah,
This one.
Next to Mercury. Yeah?
Yeah, and then all the way up
Yes.
the line is the city of Chicago.
I just
Chicago.
can't see.
Minneapolis, I see.
Yeah, it's east of Minneapolis. Am I able to draw or something?
Can you?
Minneapolis is here?
Yeah, now it's a little bit east and south of that.
A little bit east and south.
is Chicago.
East Montgomery.
Here, Chicago.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, there.
Okay, so this city of Chicago is in the state of Illinois, and the state of Illinois is the state in which Obama experienced all of his career success. Now, because Jupiter is in the Lagna, it has an influence over the entire chart, every area of life, every aspect of life. And he went from his Jupiter Dasha from 1996 until 2002. This is where all of his career prosperity and success took place. So at the same time that Obama was in his Jupiter Mahadasha, near his Jupiter line, is where he experienced all of his career and Artha success. Now, he transitioned in July 2012, and his first election into the state senate, he entered his Jupiter Mahadasha July 1996, and he won his first election in November of 1996.
Wow.
So within 5 months of entering his Jupiter Mahadasha and his Jupiter having a heavy effect on the state of Illinois in his astrocartography, he became state senator. He continued to win many elections in Illinois during this time period, and much expansion took place within his career. He had never lost an election after this point, and he continued to be reelected as state senator year after year after year after year, while in his Jupiter Mahadasha, while the Jupiter line is close to the state of Illinois in his astrocartography. So we find a strong connection between Obama's Jupiter being in Illinois, Obama being in his Jupiter Mahadasha, and the prosperity and success he experienced during his career during this time period. At the end of this period, he was also elected president. So this period also elected him as president during the end of the year. Now, presidents, even though he was located in Illinois, he couldn't, when he became a United States senator and the president of the United States, he had to move from Illinois to Washington, D.C. So yes. let's circle Washington, D.C., which is just below Philadelphia.
Yes, yep. Right.
Yes. Now, you'll notice it's pretty much smack dab in the middle between his sun line and his moon line, and it's even closer to his moon line. Now, yes. just like how Obama's Jupiter is acting exalted because of its retrograde debilitated state, Obama's moon is in a Mula Trikona exaltation because it's in 10 degrees in Taurus. And so this provides a very auspicious energy near Obama's moon line. Now, it's in the house of the 5th house, so it has a strong connection towards his dharma. It has a strong connection towards his life purpose. It has a strong connection to his destiny. And so Obama's moon in Taurus here is showing that his destiny, his dharma, his fulfillment, which is as president of the United States, which is the full realization of Obama's dharma, is actually very, very close to that moon line in Washington, D.C. So he went from his Jupiter Mahadasha, which is close to Illinois, where he experienced most of his career success, towards his moon line, which is in Washington, D.C., where he became president, and his moon is in a Mula Trikona. He served as a senator and president for many years. And so there's a connection here between the moon in Obama's chart and Washington, D.C., so it's a strong dharmic connection to the land for him. So the land of Washington, D.C. is part of this full realization of Obama's dharma. It was actually during the Mahadasha of Jupiter and the Antardasha of Moon when Obama was first elected president of the United States.
I was about to ask, just waiting for you to finish. I thought if you don't say it, I'm going to ask you that. Why? The Antardasha, that means the first time he became the US president?
Yes, he was in Antardasha moon, and both the nomination, the primaries, and the election all took place during his moon Antardasha.
And moon is passing through Washington, D.C.
Yes, I would say the land of his dharma.
And, I would also additionally add here, if you may allow, moon is in the 5th house.
Mm-hmm.
Well dignified, exalted, Multrikon. Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra, chapter 11, shloka number 5, says this as the seat of power. The 5th house is the seat of power. Mm-hmm. Here is where he got his seat of power.
Yeah, yeah. And it also, just another interesting point along those lines, is that the 5th house is also associated with past lives. And we also talked about in Astro Cartography how the moon is associated with past lives. So you could say he was meant to become president even before he entered this life.
True. And moon is the dispositor of the 7th house. The 7th house is public platform, Pada Prapti. He came on public life, public platform. And it is also the dispositor of sun. Sun is right passing near Washington. Wow, it matches. So you have the sun and moon.
Plus you were saying also that previous lifetimes also we can see probably according to the moon line into the chart. So it means he probably spent his one of the previous lives there as well. So he's
a deep desire to be the president. From coming from previous life, you say always the deep desire.
Moon.
Moon.
My intuition is that he, even though he might not have become president in a past lifetime, that he has been a politician in the United States for many lifetimes. And this was just the next step for him as a soul to the full realization.
Next level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so beautiful.
Yes, definitely beautiful. Scientific.
Yeah, it's totally, I had a feeling that Obama, his chart was going to be he's a very spiritual person as well. So I thought he would be in alignment with these things.
Yes.
Where is his, if I may ask, where is his Saturn line?
His Saturn line is,
the black color? No, the black is Pluto.
No, it's a dark brown. So
this one?
Yes. And it's very interesting. That line is the area where he did not receive votes.
Oh.
Wow.
Like Texas and other areas, they were not as happy with Obama.
Okay. But South would not, I do not know much of US political this thing, but I presume the South would not normally vote for him, right?
Correct. Yeah, it shows that in some way he might feel a little uncomfortable in those areas.
What about this violet color line, purple violetish?
That's Neptune.
And anything in his political career that's happened on this Oklahoma City, this area?
That's an interesting question. I think there are primaries in that area, which means earlier elections for his. So I'm not exactly sure how he fared in that area, but that intersection of lines would show. There's some challenges and overcoming those challenges there that would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Let's move on to Babe Ruth. Okay, great. So let's. Okay, here we go. Yes. So here we have the #1 most famous baseball player of all time, Babe Ruth. He was born February 6th, 1895 in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, in the early 1900s, things were a little different in the United States, and there was a lot more consciousness was not as advanced. There was a lot of separation. There was a lot of segregation. There was racial difficulties. The Second World War hadn't even started yet. So we're looking at a time where consciousness is at a whole different place than it is now, way less advanced, way less sophisticated. And I used Babe Ruth as an example because we're taking someone who isn't necessarily on a spiritual path and seeing how, nonetheless, no matter spiritual, no matter what your dharma is, that the astrocartography has a really large influence on your success. And and especially as career success. Babe Ruth, his career being a baseball player, they called him the Babe or the Great Bambino. And so pretty much how I want to look at this energy is he, again, just emphasizing that he was an alcoholic. He, they said that Babe Ruth's favorite meal was a beer and a hot dog. So just again, pointing out the fact that this isn't someone who necessarily has a very strong spiritual path. We're looking at it just in terms of career and financial prosperity at this point. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that if you look at the Northeast United States, so pretty much Cincinnati all the way past through Philadelphia. So we're looking at that intersection of all four of those lines there. So from Philadelphia, so the blue line, both green lines, and the purple line. These are four lines that are heavily influencing Babe Ruth's career and success. Now, Babe Ruth's second house, which is the first place that you go for Artha, has both Jupiter and the moon inside of it. Mm-hmm. Now, the Jupiter and the moon inside of it is very important because his moon is going through Baltimore, which is his place of birth, where he first came to understand, what is my career? I'm meant to be a baseball player. Now, he played many years for New York. He played many years for Boston. But because both the moon line, the Venus line, the Mercury line, and the Jupiter line are all in the Northeast United States, all of those lines are pushing a ton of energy upwards over that over that entire area.
Okay.
So first of all, the moon line being close to Baltimore, which represents where he was born, and also shows a connection to his mother. So the moon line, but it also shows the place where he began to find his career. He began to prosper in his career. And because all four of these lines are showing up in Artha, so in the second house you have Jupiter and the moon, and in the 10th house you have Venus and Mercury. And you have Jupiter, moon, and Venus and Mercury all within the Northeast segment of the United States. So pretty much all of his Artha and all of his career prosperity is located in the Northeast aspect of the United States here. It shows that he was literally meant to be extremely prosperous and successful in his baseball career as relates to this Northeast segment of the United States. And so let's say he went to another team, he might not have been as successful, but because he was in the New York and Boston, he experienced an incredible amount of success in his baseball career, saying that as long as Babe Ruth stayed within the Northeast aspect of the United States, his career in baseball and his financial prosperity would continue to be successful because his birth chart and his astrocartography have a strong alignment to that place. Now, Babe Ruth was in his Jupiter dasha from 1904 to 1920. And and his baseball career was from 1914 to 1935. So the first 6 years of his baseball career were in the Jupiter Mahadasha. Again, the Jupiter Astro Cartography line aspecting the Northeast United States there. And Jupiter being in the second house, that was the time in his career from 1914 to 1920 where he actually was able to achieve financial independence. It wasn't necessarily the most successful years of his baseball career, but it was the years that he achieved the most it was the years that he started to achieve financial success and was able to develop financial independence. And again, Jupiter being in the second house, the house of wealth. So a strong indication for him developing wealth in that area in the Northeast United States at that time. Also, I wanted to mention that he has Venus and Mercury in the 10th house of career. You will also notice both the Mercury and Venus lines are aligned to the northern aspect. So Mercury and Venus in the 10th house of career, and then Mercury and Venus also here in the Northeast United States. So Venus, we mentioned, brings the stronger qualities of wealth. So this is where it's also showing that when he moved from his work, he moved from his Artha into his career full time, he experienced a lot of wealth. And while baseball players didn't get paid even a fraction of what they're getting paid today, they were very happy with the amount of money they were receiving at that time. They were considered celebrities. They were considered superstars. And that Babe Ruth was very much known for being a celebrity. And again, these energies of the 10th house, Venus and Mercury there, kind of emphasizing, okay, this person was meant to receive some fame, some prosperity, some career success. And where was he going to do this? Near these lines, in the Northeast United States. Now, it's interesting with baseball, and this is why one of the reasons I chose a baseball player, is that in baseball, it's about traveling. All of your success is based on traveling. There are 30 different teams in baseball. And so certain players do certain perform better against certain teams. And what does that mean is that when he was playing in the Northeast United States, in the areas of New York, in the areas of Boston, in Philadelphia, you also have Cincinnati, you also have Detroit. I have some other cities written down. Atlanta, Chicago, all of these areas fall under these prosperity lines for Babe Ruth. And so when he played in these cities against the Chicago Cubs, against the Detroit Tigers, against the Atlanta Braves, he was incredibly successful. He always hit really good against them. He always had a lot of power against them, and he always had a great amount of success against them. If you go to the West Coast and you look at, there are teams in California as well. What is that line in California? It's the Saturn.
Mars.
Yeah, so he didn't quite do as successful there. He was a much better player. A lot of his growth as a baseball player took place in the Northeast United States. He might be facing the exact same pitcher, but when he faced that pitcher in New York, he hit a home run. When he faced that pitcher in California, he striked out.
Oh.
And this is just, again, to show you that basic energy that even though his career primarily took place in the Northeast United States, as a baseball player, you have to travel. And so when he would travel to these other locations that were further away from this intersection of prosperity, he didn't quite do as well as he did. He would strike out a lot more, be a lot more frustrated, again, separated from his family, his wife, his children, all of these energies when he would have to go to the West Coast. So there's a really strong energy here of the success and the career prosperity primarily taking place in the Northeast United States. And the closer he got to that Saturn line, And the further he got away from his northeast prosperity lines, the poorer he would do.
Also, we can see here Mars and Saturn also both exalted, yeah, but they are in adverse houses, yeah, 6, 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In his chart.
Yeah, that's very true.
Where is his Neptune, if I may ask?
His Neptune looks like it's New Orleans. I see it in New Orleans. It's in St. Louis, and he did play in St. Louis. So yeah, I don't think he did as well in St. Louis either. He played in New York, Boston, and Baltimore. His career statistics are better than almost any other area.
Well, and the reason I asked this was Neptune, they usually say, gives addictions and alcoholism, etc. You know, so whether he drank more in these areas, or for further research, people who are into addictions, if they shift away from their Neptune, or do they smoke or drink more when they are nearer their addiction lines? You know?
Yeah, that's a great point. And in cartography, again, Venus has a lot to do with addiction as well. Moon can have a lot to do with addiction. And so sometimes Rahu, well. Yeah, definitely Rahu. And so being close to these lines both give us an opportunity to work on the addiction if that's what we want to work on. But it also gives us an opportunity to get away with the addiction if that's what we want to do as well.
True. Fantastic. This is a brilliant show.
Yeah. Okay, so just to conclude a few points, and I look forward to, using more examples and focusing on a different topic in the future. Right. But there is no specific planetary lines that indicate career, art, or prosperity without a proper analysis of how the astrocartography is relating to the birth chart. Again, like Inch mentioned, that his Saturn and Mars had exaltations, but they were in the 6th house and the 12th house. These aren't places that are necessarily going to support his prosperity, his success. And so it's really an analysis of all of the factors that would normally be taken in during a Vedic astrology reading: the position of the planet, the bulla of the planet, the aspects, the dignity, the conjunctions, and how that relates to the astrocartography. So, you may see your sun line somewhere and say, oh, wonderful, I'm going to go to that sun line. But if your sun line is debilitated in the 8th house, that place is going to be hell. So you really want to kind of consider all these different factors in, and that's why in itself astrocartography is a very complicated. It's simple in its understanding, but there are so many intricacies going on that it's easy to make mistakes. Like how I had mentioned in my Jupiter line, I was expecting abundance, prosperity, and because my Jupiter is retrograde in an enemy position, I got robbed. So there's just it's incredibly accurate. It's incredibly powerful. It can show what the geography is meant for us and where we can achieve certain things in certain areas. But the only way to truly figure it out is to go to these places and experience these places and say, okay, this is what I thought might be the energy in these places for me. This is what I thought might be the cartography energies here for me. And when I went to this place, I experienced that, or I went to this place and I experienced something very different. And it can be a great educational tool in that process. But in general, acclimating or aligning to certain planetary lines during specific planetary periods is really helpful. So when the Mahadasha or the Antardasha are in alignment with the astrocartography, this can be very auspicious. This can be very beneficial. Of course, you know, I'm in Saturn Mahadasha, and I still don't feel particularly drawn to my Saturn Astro Cartography line. But where my Moon Antardasha was, I'm about to go back there for another 9 months just because and I've moved on to a Mars Antardasha. So there's 2 malefic planets, Mahadasha, Antardasha, and so I'm personally going to go back to where I know there's a benefic energy there for me in New Mexico for a little while as I get through this Mars Antardasha period. And so, yes, aligning to the Dasha periods, but also aligning to the beneficial, the functionally benefic lines is very helpful in achieving Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, and improving the overall quality of life.
Sounds great. Sounds brilliant. I would like to add 2 things. One is that astro.com. I would want you to take that tool and just show us one particular horoscope.
Okay.
You know, how to share the screen. Maybe you could take the horoscope of John F. Kennedy, because I really want to see whether his Dallas line was passing through his Dallas line.
Okay.
If you want, I can give you the birth details of John F. Kennedy.
Okay. How do I pull up a...
You share screen.
Okay.
Then will come an option, and you share the desktop.
Okay.
And from there, you will have full functionality over your screen and programs.
Do you guys see
We see all what you see.
Okay, so you can see astro.com now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So for everyone, so they know how to take a look at the Astro Cartography, astro.com offers this amazing free software. It's wonderful for getting a sense, getting an idea of where these different planetary lines are for you. When you go to the astro.com main page, you're going to go under free horoscopes. Once you go under free horoscopes, there's a section called interactive horoscopes, and you want to click on what calls Astro Click Travel. This will connect you to the free software. You click Astro Click Travel here, and this is where you will enter the details for your astrocartography. So we're going to take a look at John F. Kennedy. And Sunil, what are his birth details?
That's 29th May, 1917, 3 p.m. And that's Brooklyn, Massachusetts.
Brooklyn, Massachusetts?
Yeah. Maybe you'll have to do Brooklyn spelling Brooklyn. That might show up.
L-I-N-E?
Yeah, that might show up.
Got it.
Yeah.
So here you'll have an option as to which aspect of the globe you would like to look at. We'll start with North America. Here we go.
There's Dallas.
Oops. Yeah. So here we have John F. Kennedy's astrocartography map. Looks like you have a very strong sun line in the west coast.
Mm-hmm.
You have a moon and Venus and moon line, very similar to mine, going through the Midwest, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, and very interesting as well. You have a Rahu Ketu line. Even though he was by the liberal community, honored as one of the most exciting and greatest presidents to ever, be elected into office. He had received a lot of opposition. And so one of the first things that jumps out at me is that Washington, D.C. is between Rahu, Ketu, and Saturn.
Could you use the cursor and show the line?
So this is the node line, Rahu, Ketu.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the Saturn line here.
Okay.
So this whole area, so to speak, and I'm not sure about where his these planets are in his birth chart, but this...
It is in the Rahu Ketu. Ketu is in the 10th house.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And Saturn is in the 11th house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pluto.
I can share the screen if you want. I can share the screen if you want to see the birth chart.
Yeah, Pluto's and Chiron is running through Dallas.
Pluto is in the 10th house.
Mm-hmm.
What are the lines running through Dallas? I
Pluto,
see a line.
the two black,
in Dallas.
the two black ones.
Pluto
Chiron.
and Chiron, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and Pluto is called the planet for death or the underworld.
Yama.
Yama. Okay. Okay. And that's straight away hitting Dallas, right?
Pluto not is Chiron, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is.
Chiron. Okay.
But Pluto also has a very heavy effect there.
Yes.
It's pretty nearby. Pretty nearby. Pretty nearby.
Yeah.
Yes.
The interesting part is he was going through Jupiter Saturn when he got assassinated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could definitely see the Saturn line there having an influence. What city was he assassinated?
Dallas. Dallas, right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we are going into uncharted territories like Chiron. Maybe we should leave it for later. I'm quite sure that there is more to this. But the interesting part that you said is a Rahu Ketu.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Rahu Ketu and so in Astro Cartography, there is no separate line for Rahu and separate line for Ketu?
No, it's one line of the nodes.
Okay, and that the color is this color.
Yes, this black right here.
And what is the symbol used for it?
The symbol there is it looks like a Leo. It's this close to symbol for Leo, but there are two circles.
Okay. Okay.
Wonderful.
I probably need to just Google and get the symbols for all these planets, and then I'm set. For us, we have learned without symbols. But it's fantastic. Thanks for showing us how to create a horoscope on astro.com. And
Exactly.
yeah. Good.
Wonderful point.
Sorry?
Wonderful point.
Wonderful points. And this is the horoscope of
John F.
John F. Kennedy. But thank you so much, Kṣaṇāti, for such a fantastic session. I mean, I know it's been a lengthy session and pretty new, especially people who are new. For them, they would be finding it a bit difficult, but I want them to go through this video a couple of times, not give it up the way I gave it up 13 years back. I always tell people the mistakes that I have done in astrology and in life, others should not repeat it. I would like to end this with a further point of research, which I did do a little bit. I worked on it for quite some time. 10, 12 years back. This Juliana had told me, Juliana Swanson, that the technique was given by Dennis Kṣaṇāti. Okay, is let's assume you do not have an ACG software. At that time I could not afford an ACG software. You know, so she said, suppose you're from Bombay and you plan to shift to Banaras, for example, or maybe Delhi. Okay, or from Philadelphia you want to shift somewhere else. Okay, you create your own horoscope, natal birth chart. Instead of location of where you were born, instead of the location where you were born, you put that new city where you want to shift, and then see how the horoscope is turning out. For different vargas, so for marriage, how it will turn out, for career, how it will turn out. I did experiment a little bit and it used to match brilliantly. Of course, now my memory is gone. That was a couple of years back, 12 years back. So that's an area of research I'm giving it for the audience, It's something that is Dennis Kṣaṇāti's technique, but I'm quite sure after this we would have many people wanting to know where their career, where their Artha fulfillments can happen, in which cities, in which countries, etc. And I want you, Kṣaṇāti, to come and tell the most important thing for today's young kids, where will they find the love of their life?
Okay, I would love to talk about this.
I'm quite sure I'm going to be giving, if you allow, I'm going to be giving your email ID out there at the end of this video. People are going to blast you, asking you, where am I going to get my love, my career, my health, So Jyotish should help people.
Yeah.
Jyotish should help people in specific areas like this. Because sometimes we do not know our love might be somewhere else.
Yeah, I was looking for my love in Philadelphia for 25 years. I moved to New Mexico to study Ayurveda, and because my moon, I find my wife there.
Oh my God.
So, and I said, and when I first started studying astrocartography, Simon Chikoisky was looking at my astrocartography in front of the whole class. He says, "You're in between Moon and Venus here. You're going to be surrounded by women, and I have a sense that you will find somebody special." And I ended up finding my wife there. So it is really it works. It works. It totally works.
One question came up just now in Gemini terminology. Yeah, your moon. What it is? It is Darakaraka. Is it?
Is it Darakaraka, your moon?
Is my Darakaraka moon? I believe. No, my Darakaraka is Jupiter.
Oh, okay. Okay, that was just a question.
No, Jupiter's dispositor should be Shukra, which is connected to the moon.
And also, my Jupiter is in the 4th house, whose natural is a moon in Cancer house.
Yeah. So Jupiter's dispositor is Venus, which is with moon. Mm-hmm. Dispositor also gives the thing, now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's been a great honor and pleasure and privilege to have you.
Yes, such a blessing for me. Thank you.
I feel we are bonded. I feel we are very bonded. This is special. Love you, man. What you shared us is my dream, that I want people to learn new things and not be narrow-minded, to integrate, when we can accept so much from the West, in our lives, technology, this, that, etc. There are so many hundreds of techniques in Western astrology, and we got to keep the fire of Jim Lewis, the light of Jim Lewis alive, for the genius of a man that he was, Thank you so much, Inge. I want you to take this ahead with Kṣaṇāti. You have great patience. Thank you so much, Kṣaṇāti.
Thank you, Sunil. It's been such a blessing. I've had so much fun with both of you today. This has been so exciting, and I have a strong intuition that we will be doing much more work together in the future. And I also feel very bonded and connected, and I thank you from the depth of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to
We're
you.
going to work together. We're going to work together. Thank you. Pranam.